Fertilization can improve crop yield and quality and is beneficial to soil fertility. This has been proved by production practice, but if the fertilizer is not applied properly, it can cause very serious negative effects, such as reduced quality, decreased fertility, reduced economic benefits, and so on. More seriously, it will have a bad impact on the environment, especially the rural ecological environment. This is detrimental to the development of agriculture or even human development. Therefore, it is of great significance to understand what is scientific fertilization and grasp the principle of scientific fertilization to guide agricultural production. Now let's move on to the main content of this lesson, the basic principle of scientific fertilization. The so-called scientific fertilization means the correct fertilization measures adopted for cultivation of a crop or a series of crops under certain climate and soil conditions. It includes the combination of organic fertilizer and chemical fertilizer, the proportion of various nutrient elements, the choice of fertilizer varieties, the economic amount of fertilizer, the appropriate period and method of fertilization, etc. Nutrient return theory has positive significance for restoring and maintaining soil fertility. It points out the basic principle of fertilizing crops, but it also has its one-sidedness and weakness. After Liebig succeeded in making some chemical fertilizers based on his own theory of mineral nutrition, to ensure the most efficient use of these fertilizers, he proposed the theory of minimum nutrient law on the basis of experiments. Minimum nutrient law states plants must absorb nutrients in order to grow, but what determines crop yields is the smallest relative amount of available nutrients in the soil. Within a certain range, yield varies with the increase or decrease of this minimum nutrient. If this nutrient limitation is ignored, it will be difficult to increase crop yield, even by increasing other nutrients. The following points should be noted when applying the minimum nutrient law to guide fertilization. 1. The minimum nutrient in the minimum nutrient law is not the nutrient that is the least in absolute quantity in the soil, but the nutrient that is the least in relation to the needs of the crop. 2. The minimum nutrient requirements for crops are not fixed. When a minimal nutrient is replenished and improved, another nutrient that was not a minimum nutrient may become a new minimum nutrient that limits crop yield. The minimum nutrient law deals with nutrient supply, but in the process of plant growth, there are many factors affecting plant growth, not limited to nutrients. Therefore, some people have further extended the nutrient conditions to other conditions necessary for plant growth, thus forming another law, that is, the law of comprehensive action of factors. The central idea is that plant yield is the result of a combination of factors, such as light, water, nutrients, temperature, variety, and cultivation practices. But there must be a limiting factor that dominates. To some extent, the yield is restricted by this limiting factor. This law has important guiding significance for analyzing the problems existing in specific fields and increasing production measures. In the late 18th century, Duerg, a French classical economist, put forward the theory of diminishing returns on the basis of summarizing a large number of scientific experiments. The rate of diminishing returns has the following implications. 1. This rule is that within a production cycle of agricultural production, there is usually no general major change in technology, and the overall situation remains relatively stable. If there is a new reform or breakthrough in a certain technical condition in the production process, the factors that limit the yield of plants will change accordingly. With the improvement of new limiting factors, plant yield will increase, but after reaching a certain amount, it will still show a decreasing trend. 2. The law of diminishing returns illustrates the relationship between investment and output. Output is not always positively correlated with input. If we do not pay attention to the relationship between input and output and blindly apply a large amount of fertilizer, the phenomenon of increasing yield without increasing income will inevitably occur. 3. Because input and output do not show a linear positive correlation, the optimal fertilizer application rate should be determined according to the effect curve of plants on fertilizer to achieve high yield. The rate of diminishing returns reveals the general law between crop yield and fertilizer application, and makes fertilizer application from experimental to quantitative. It answers the question of how much fertilizer to apply, grasps the basic principle of scientific fertilization, achieves scientific fertilization, and ensure the sustainable development of agriculture. Okay, that's all for this lesson. Thank you.